don't know why it's been talking to me lately. All right. Well, welcome everyone to Roundabout's Zoom event with JT Bushnell for his new book. My name is Julie. I'm the events manager at Roundabout. If you haven't been able to come into the store recently, I just want to remind everyone we are open currently 10 to 5, Monday through Friday. We are going to be extending our hours for summer because we know people want to come in the evenings, grab a book, grab a coffee. So watch for that on our website and in our newsletter. If you're not already receiving our newsletter, you can sign up for it on our website. Make sure you get notified about all these events that are coming up. We are booked through the end of July for events, so watch for some amazing things coming. I'm so excited for this event tonight. There's a personal connection with this author's publisher from Portland State. So we're going to get into having this conversation because I want to know more about this book. So real quick, let me let that person in. Let me give you just a little rundown of JT's book. So Ed Garrison has it all: a successful basketball career, a great relationship with his brother, and a supportive family. With summer vacation the only thing standing between him and a full ride scholarship to UC Berkeley, Ed feels invincible. But everything falls apart when his mother leaves his father for a woman 3,000 miles away. Soon, Ed lashes out. He turns down his scholarship in favor of attending a small school in Northern California to distance himself from his family. As the years pass, Ed has no choice but to reckon with his past mistakes as his dreams of a basketball career are shattered and his family continues to crumble. Our author, JT Bushnell, teaches writing and literature at Oregon State University. His fiction has been published in 20 literary journals, and his essays about writing appear in Poets and Writers, the Writer and Fiction Writers Review, where he is a contributing editor. The Step Back is his first novel. And I did want to mention this is being published by Ooligan Press, which is a trade publisher out of Portland State University that is completely run by students while they're earning their master's degree. So, JT, I kind of wanted to ask you just real quick, how was it working with students?
It was fantastic. I mean, one of the reasons why I targeted Ooligan very early was because I knew that it was staffed by grad students. And I know, in my experience, grad students are some of the most engaged readers and workers that I've been around. I know that when I was in graduate school, I was so just excited to be involved with, writing and literature and teaching and that kind of stuff, which was my graduate school experience, that I was just always charged up and I was always just fully immersed in everything that I was doing. And I hoped that the graduate students at Ooligan would be that way, rather than, the drowsy professionals of the rest of the publishing world. And that turned out to be absolutely true. I mean, I was blown away right from the beginning when the acquisition editors sent me basically like a 10-page single-spaced developmental edit that not only parsed the novel's goals and gave suggestions for how to achieve it better, but really insightfully identified what I was trying to accomplish and what the novel's thrust was, which isn't always the case. I mean, even among other writers. So I was really impressed from the very beginning with Ooligan, and the whole process was really just outstanding. And the professionalism and the insight just continually blew me away.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. So one of the questions I love to ask people is, when did you start writing this book? What was the thing that finally said to you, I have this story, I want to write a book?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated question, or I guess it's a complicated answer, because I've worked on so many different versions of this book. The version that became the actual novel that appears behind me today, I'd actually written about 600 pages and 2 full drafts of before the first lines of this version occurred to me. And the thing that spurred it was, I'm a runner. I do distance running, and I was injured and I couldn't run, and it was hard. Because I rely on that for a lot, both, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. And it was really hard. And I found myself missing running, and missing running sort of collapsed into this deeper feeling of missing something. And the thing that I missed, the thing that I really got obsessed with remembering, were the pickup basketball games that I used to play in high school and college. And I just remembered those games with such reverence. And I just missed them so much. Like I wanted to go out and play, but I was injured in a way that prevented it. And anyway, it would have been different, you know, not being around my friends and not being young anymore. But the feeling of missing it became, obsessive is putting it too strongly, but it was something that I decided to explore on the page. So I took the characters that I'd been working with and sort of set up a basketball scene, and the setup to the basketball scene created, involved enough that I was able to basically pursue those threads for the rest of the novel. But it was basically just wanting to write about a little pickup basketball.
That's so cool. So tell us a little bit more about the main character. Tell us a little bit about Ed.
Yeah, so Ed is a character who's facing a moment like many or all young adults face, or people on the precipice of adulthood, which is that he is at the moment where he has to leave behind his, not just his childhood, but all the things that anchored and sustained him during his childhood. His community, his family, his relationships. Many people feel this moment when they go off to college. Other people feel it at other moments. So he's at this moment where he's sort of about to cross this threshold from his childhood life into this, you know, the great wilderness of the beginning of adulthood. And this is exacerbated when his family falls apart as he's making this transition. So the family falls apart both as a unit and the individual members of the family all sort of transform in a way that leaves him unable to recognize or connect with the people who had been his anchor in his past. And so he's sort of launched into the wilderness of adulthood in a really, not exaggerated, but dramatic, in a way that, you know, that these feelings that a lot of us feel sort of vaguely are in sharp relief for Ed.
Yeah. So how did you do that? Because I know a lot of authors are drawn on personal experience, but when it comes to something like this, like, you know, where do you come up with the idea of saying, okay, this kid's going to go to college, but also his family's just going to completely fall apart?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it comes intuitively. And in fact, when it's working best, you don't know where it comes from. You just sort of get quiet and the ideas just emerge, and you follow them and you don't ask questions. But actually, a lot of it was to set up the basketball. So I wanted to write this. I wanted to write a scene where playing basketball felt as holy as it seemed in my memory. And so the question that confronted me was, like, how do I make just, you know, a little athletic endeavor feel that meaningful and purposeful and wonderful? So I concocted these other elements to basically lend meaning and purpose to the basketball scene. A lot of them came from, they came from personal experience, or they came from interests that are born of personal experience. Mm-hmm. So I've described in a few places that the inspiration for Ed's attitude about his family's collapse and some of the elements of his family's collapse come from a young man who I talked to when I was about 30 and he was about 18. And he basically was wondering if a woman had wrecked his mother's marriage. And it was clearly false. And it in other words, it was clear to me that that's not what had occurred, but that he had kind of invented this motivation in his mind, this like tawdry situation that broke up his family. And it really interested me why someone would do that. And so I sort of pursued that mindset without quite understanding it into some of these other things. Probably the reason it interested me is because my parents were also divorced and divorced around the same time. So, you know, some of it's personal experience, some of it's imagination, some of it's observation, and you sort of weave them all together into this thing we call fiction.
Yeah. Well, and of course, it's the old adage that we've always heard is write what you know, because of course that's going to be very authentic. So as a, writing instructor, how do I want to phrase this? What's it like kind of being on the other side though? Like you're teaching kids, new adults, good writing techniques and that kind of stuff. And now you've been published in journals, but you're a published author. So, how is that experience maybe informing your teaching more?
Well, I mean, I actually haven't taught as a published author yet. Oh. I'm on parental leave right now. My youngest daughter is 7 months old. And so I'm on parental leave this term, the term that it came out. And so I haven't actually done any teaching while I was, holding the status of author. I suspect it will change nothing. Students don't really care about your personal or professional life. You're just a figure at the front of the classroom. You're not quite faceless, but you are kind of nameless and without identity. And they just aren't interested in really pursuing a relationship beyond that, usually, which is fine with me. But no, I mean, so sometimes I have visiting writers in my classroom, other people who teach at OSU. I'll have them come in and read a little bit and answer questions, and the students always get really excited about it. And every once in a while, the person I bring in will say, your teacher's a writer too. And they sort of give me this look like, what? I had no idea. So I don't know, maybe that will happen more often, but I suspect it won't. I don't think they will find out. I don't think they'll know.
That's interesting. I think it must be maybe more just me personally. I'm always still I get starstruck by people who are published because I know how hard the business is, that it's just so cool for me to meet someone who pulled this amazing story out of their brain and someone else was like, everyone needs to read this. Like, that's my celebrity. So speaking of reading, would you read a little bit from the book for us?
Yeah, let me just preface this by saying that I took to the interwebs to let people select what I was going to be reading tonight. And I really appreciate everyone who voted. The options were sex scenes, which thank God only received one vote. So it's not going to be that. A bad date, basketball, puppy mill visit, running a marathon, and the winner is fist fighting. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna witness a little fist fighting. I don't think there's anything that anyone needs to know about this scene, other than that it's nighttime in a kind of a dilapidated neighborhood in Northern California, right next to the coast, right next to the ocean. There was no walkway, so I moved across the yard. It was littered with chewed up scraps of plastic, gutted toys, beef ribs gnawed into pale blades. A blonde baseball bat, pitted with tooth marks, was splayed halfway to the landing. I paused over it, recalling Derek's threat and his conviction for assault. But carrying a bat to the door seemed like an unnecessary escalation, so I left it behind and did my best to think of Derek charitably. He had made mistakes, but who hadn't? The opportunity to correct one was precious, and that was what I could offer him. I stepped up and knocked. When the door opened, I wished I had the bat. Derek's eyes took on a beady intensity that made the back of my neck prickle, as if he couldn't believe his luck, but knew better than to show it. His stubble was dark, and an oversized t-shirt billowed in the wind like a sail. His pants were made of windbreaker material, and his pale feet were splayed beneath them like two nocturnal creatures. Behind him, there was only an economy-sized bag of pretzels next to a jug of wild turkey and a dented beanbag chair, all of it bathed in the shifting blue light of a television. There was no sign of Paris, and I knew that someone who kept his own dog chained in the yard wouldn't keep mine inside. I'm here for my dog, I told him. His eyes moved to Tanya, then the Volvo, pausing briefly on each before returning to me, his expression flat and inscrutable behind his oversized glasses. He stepped over the threshold and closed the door, and I felt my body register the breach of space between us. Could you please tell me where he is? I asked. Derek offered only a cruel smile. I'm sorry about what happened, I told him. I didn't mean for it to hurt you. Well, if you didn't mean it, then I guess it didn't happen. I just want my dog back, I repeated. You think I give a fuck what you want? I think you want to do the right thing. His hand came up, 2 fingers pistoled toward my chest. I told you not to touch her, and now you're standing here telling me about the right thing? If you want to hate me, fine, but you need to tell me where my dog is. The 2 fingers came forward, landed on my shoulder, and shoved. My shoulder snapped back, and I became aware of the attention from the Volvo, the way you become aware of attention from the bleachers as you concentrate on a free throw. Or what? He asked. Quit it, Tanya said, as if it was part of an old argument between them. The dog doesn't have anything to do with this, I said. The dog is gone. Derek shoved me again, and my shoulder snapped back again. He seemed to know just the right amount of pressure to use, enough to snap my shoulder back, but little enough for it to make me look weak. I thought of my father and my brother again, watching me be pushed around by this ridiculous man, waiting patiently for the dog they should have had since my mother left. My heart was pounding and my limbs felt weightless. I made myself take a breath. I'm not going to fight you, I said. Won't keep you from getting your ass kicked. He shoved again. Didn't I warn you what would happen? Didn't I? Then my father was calling across the yard, everybody just calm down. He staggered toward us on his bad leg, shoulders seesawing from the effort to hurry, palms in the air. Behind him, Charlie was pale-faced in the far reaches of the porch light, watching from the Volvo's window. Closer, Romeo looked at us eagerly from the end of his chain, his tail swinging a slow rhythm until he pounced on a soggy-looking rope toy and shook it violently. I was annoyed at my father for breaking his promise to stay in the car, and I forgot to strip the aggravation from my voice when I turned back to Derek and said, would you just give me back my dog? Forget the dog, man. You're never going to see that dog again. I got rid of it. I pictured him leading Paris toward the dark beach, a rifle slung over his shoulder, and my chest clenched. If Derek didn't relent, what could I do except send my father and brother back to their lonely house without me or the dog I had promised them? A feeling of wildness opened up in me, one I recognized, and black shapes billowed up at the edges of my vision. But I'm here, Derek said. His smile was like an invitation, and when his fingers landed on my shoulder again, a charge shot through my arms. They almost seemed to be acting on their own as they knocked his hand away and drove themselves into his chest, wrenching a cry from my throat, too long and desperate to be only from exertion. It sounded miserable even to me. Derek recovered his 2 fumbling steps, then planted, pivoted, and sent a quick, straight fist into my field of vision. It came as a surprise, not only because of its speed and impact, but also because of its grace. It landed below my eye and sent sparks exploding across my vision, left pressure and numbness spreading across my cheek and into my sinus, and allowed everything that encumbered me to break cleanly away, leaving me free, unobstructed, empty of everything except a steady, focused, homicidal tranquility. I charged him, running straight through a second punch at my ear and a third to the back of my neck as I drove a shoulder into his stomach and lifted him with wrapped arms, bringing him down hard on his back. I felt the impact of the ground through the meaty pad of his body, heard the deep involuntary of the air leaving his lungs. My momentum sent me somersaulting over the top, and I scraped my shoulder and hip on the concrete landing, then scrambled to my feet while Derek writhed on his back, mouth moving like a fish pulled from water, trying to take in oxygen he had no access to. Then Tanya was between us, palms out, restraining me the way referees and umpires do when one player pursues another in wordless fury. She was shouting words that collected at the back of my attention like a television playing in another room, as Derek got up, looking strangled, still trying to draw a breath that wouldn't come. His eyes looked small and angry without the glasses covering them, and they locked on me with the same brutality that coursed through my veins. My father grabbed at Derek's shoulders while Tanya grabbed at mine, but we both broke away, rushing at each other again, swinging and slipping and grasping until Tanya and my father intervened again. We circled each other as we struggled, until I noticed the chewed up bat lying a few feet away. I broke toward it, but Romeo pounced, pinning it with his front paws, rump in the air, tail wagging, and the three of them seized me. I grunted, struggling to loosen myself, or maybe drive all four of us across the yard, anything in my power to reach the bat. But they overpowered me, driving me backward until my feet got tangled and I went down. That was when things got bad. Nobody was restraining Derek anymore, and so nobody could prevent him from jumping on me, pinning each of my shoulders with a heavy knee, or raining down one blow after another. I thrashed, trying to throw him off, and when I couldn't, a feeling of helplessness settled over me like cold snow. Not even the sight of my father above him, fist raised awkwardly, showing the spiral where his pinky curled into his palm, could relieve the hardening fear that I was in real trouble. My father brought his fist down, driving from the elbow like a man trying to hammer home a stubborn nail, landing it atop Derek's head. It had no effect other than to distract him a moment and to throw Tanya into action. She stepped between my father and Derek, as if to diffuse their skirmish before addressing ours, knocking my father off balance. And he couldn't get his bad leg under him fast enough. It looked almost involuntary, the way he grabbed the tail of Tanya's untucked work shirt and pulled her after him, so that they both went spinning to the ground. Derek, his elbow flared, his neat row of knuckles still angled by his ear, his face calm except for the crease of concentration between his eyebrows, was free to return his attention to me. The blows were like shots of Novocaine. I got another in the cheek, one in the ear, the mouth, the other cheek, until my whole face felt thick and dull. The one to my nose made it feel tight, out of place, and then the blood came warmly down the sides of my face, filling my mouth with the taste of pennies. I wasn't worried about the blood, though, or even the pain, as much as I was worried about the damage he was inflicting, because the part of me being battered was full of important equipment I would have liked to keep intact. But there was simply no way to keep the blows from coming. All I could do was squeeze my eyes and clench my jaw and turn my head from the place the last one had landed. But again and again, they emerged from the darkness to send white pinwheels exploding across my vision. And I think I better stop there before I give anything important away.
That was great. Thank you. So I think my last question, and then we can open it up to everyone, is if you can tell us without giving too much away, what kind of is the timeline of the book? Like how young is Ed when it starts? You know, how many years are we looking at?
Let's see. It's the spring of his senior year of high school to the spring of his sophomore year of college. Okay. So it's a 2-year span pretty cleanly.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a very formative, you know, lots of things changing during that time of your life, as we're seeing people, you know, graduate during this pandemic right now too. That's a big change. Well, let's go ahead and open it up to our audience for some questions. If you're not familiar with Zoom, there are a couple of options. You can type it into the chat, or you can use the raise hand function, or if you have video, just raise your hand and wave at me and I can unmute you. So yeah, if anyone has questions, let's go ahead and open it up to that. We've got a couple people on here with the same last name as you. So I suppose we might get some questions from there, maybe. Let's see here.
Feel free also to comment with the score of the Blazers game. Anyone who has that.
We can probably Google that for you. Well, hey, Leslie, let me come down here and make sure that you are, where'd you go? Unmuted. There you go. So it should pop up on your screen to say unmute.
Got it. Oh, hold on. Mute yours. Sorry, my husband and I are both listening on our phones. Can you hear me? Okay. So JT, hi. I love Tanya. I just enjoyed every time she came back into the book and to focus. And so I was wondering what it was like creating her and developing her.
Thank you. I mean, that is the reaction that I've gotten from every single reader, especially the ones who read the book before it was published, was Tanya's great. She steals the show every time she takes the stage. It's all I'm interested in, and I just want to see her back. So, yeah, Tanya is a character who first appears not quite halfway through the novel, about page 100 out of 250 pages. So she's a character that I didn't even conceive of until a lot of the novel was already rolling, and I kind of had, you know, I was in it. I was feeling good. I felt like things were progressing well, and I think that a lot of that feeling, or a lot of that confidence, or a lot of the just sort of excitement and ease of being in the project rather than starting it was transferred into the character. She, you know, I was able to write her with a kind of just comfort and confidence that I didn't have at the beginning of the novel. So I don't really know where she came from, other than that she was the one character who appeared to me the most fully formed, who I didn't have to think about or, you know, sort of reason through. She just kind of spoke, and I listened and followed her around and you know, reported what I observed, which writers talk about a lot. And it sounds very mystical when you hear it. I don't think it is mystical. I think it's just, you know, the part of your brain that dreams is accessible, and it's producing these ideas and images, and you're receptive enough to allow it that avenue into your conscious mind. But yeah, she was one of those characters, and just a total joy to write. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. That was a great one. Actually, going off of that, you know, are there any other characters that, as you were going and they were talking to you, that you personally were, you know, oh man, I like this person a lot more, or, you know, they might be my favorite, kind of a thing?
Try to remember all the characters. I mean, I guess I got it about Tanya most intensely, but I got the same feeling about all of the secondary women characters who come into the book, mostly as Ed's romantic interests. Every time one of these characters came into the book, it was like this charge of discovering someone new and getting to explore who they were and what made them tick, and to see them behave, and to get the little quirks of their personality, and to witness what they looked like. And there are a few of these characters. There's Danielle, who's a sort of Pollyanna-ish, you know, super sunny, everything happens for a reason and everything will be great character. There's Tanya. There's Lucien, who is a sort of depressive and pretentious photographer who fancies herself an artist. There's another character named Brittany Mercer, who's an opinion columnist, sort of politically minded, sort of vicious almost. And the difference in their personalities was always a delight, seeing how it pulled Ed in different directions, or pushed on him in different ways, or revealed him in different ways, or made him uncomfortable in different ways. But also just getting to know these people really made, it always kept the writing feeling fresh, like there was something new to discover rather than just pushing the old issues out.
That's great. And, you know, when you read a book that you can tell the author, those secondary characters are as formed as your main character. It just makes the reading so much better. Here we go. We got another one. So Dale, you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go.
Oh, hello, JJ.
Hello, Dale.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Really enjoying your book on our little excursion that we've been having. Looking forward to getting back and spending some time with you guys. A couple questions if I can. The first is I know you're a runner, as I'm a cyclist. And you mentioned earlier before that you enjoy it just again like it's for physical and psychological kind of renewal. So any working on your novel, this particular book, while you were running, any clarity that came to you? And the second question is, do you have any ideas for your next one?
Okay, so thank you, Dale, for the questions. Yeah, this is an answer I get or a question I get a lot from people when they discover that as a writer I'm also a runner. And the answer is really no, I don't do any writing or development of ideas that I'm aware of when I'm running. I say that I'm aware of because I'm a firm believer that the place that stories come from is not necessarily the prefrontal cortex that is involved with conscious thinking. I think it comes from a different part of the brain. And so I don't, work through ideas or think about the story when I'm off on a run, even a really long run. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the parts of my brain that don't operate on conscious levels are not still processing it. A lot of people have had the experience where you're trying to think of something, like you're trying to think of a name or a word, and you can't get it. And it's the moment that you finally relinquish the effort to call it to mind that it comes to mind. And I think that is a clear illustration of the way that the different parts of your brain are sort of battling to be the source of your thinking or your actions or your behavior or your impulses or your motivations. So no, I don't do any thinking about my writing when I'm running, but that doesn't mean it's not working. In fact, I love running right after I write because it sort of washes it out of me. But that process of washing it out might be a lot the same as when you finally stop trying to think of that word and then it comes to you. So by washing it out of my conscious brain, it might be allowing the other parts of my brain to sort of continue developing it or working on it. When I walk, however, my mind is just going a million miles an hour. I don't walk much, but when I was injured, I did. I think the other question was whether I have any ideas for the next one. And the answer is absolutely not. During this pandemic, it's been really challenging sort of just managing my daily life. We have 2 children. We have no childcare. We both have jobs. And right now it's just a struggle to get through every day. And I don't have any place in my life for writing. And I'm hoping that changes once things are back to normal or, as far along that scale as we can make it. But right now, no, there's nothing in the works and there just can't be.
So that actually makes me think of a question that I'm sure most people don't realize. When did you actually start writing this? You said there's a couple different versions, like how long ago?
I started working on this project in December of 2010.
Yeah.
So more than a decade.
Yeah, and that's pretty common.
Yeah, I mean, for some writers, it's just the way it is. For other writers, that's a really long time. But yeah, I mean, it's been a long process. I mean, I'm a different person now, without a doubt, than I was when I started this project. The first couple of years, we're producing versions of the novel that are very different from the one now. In fact, this novel, the first lines of this novel were intended to be backstory. Material from the past of the version that I was working on at the time. So they were very different versions. The first couple of years, I was kind of exploring these characters in a much different place in their lives and much different material. I got to work through a lot that way, but I started working on this version probably in 2012 or 2013. Then, you know, there's been a year or two of just publication process.
Yeah.
So depending on how you look at it, it's not quite that long. But yeah, it's a long, writing a novel is hard. It's a long process.
It looks like Toby has a question.
Yeah. Hi, JT.
Hello,
nice
Toby.
To see your face. Thank
you.
And so awesome to hear you read this. I'm about a third of the way through and really enjoying it. And I actually have two questions. One is about, since you've been writing this for so long, one of the things that like really strikes me while I'm reading it is, as a parent now, I like, it feels so painful to me, this idea of like being able to put your child through so much. In, you know, my kid's 3, so like obviously the character in the book is much older, but it's almost like hard to read because it makes me think about like, oh my God, like there's all this stuff that you can't control. And so you started writing this before you were a parent. Has the way that you relate to that aspect of it changed as you were writing it, and then also even now, like as you read it and think about it?
Yeah, I mean, everything, including the book, has changed in that way, right? I mean, like, I'm sure even if you weren't reading the book, you would be feeling the same way. Like I have these moments of parenting when it's like has some minor thing, will it turn into some injustice in my child's mind that breeds this resentment that, you know, severs our relationship and sends them along? Your mind works this way, I think, when you're a parent, naturally. So yes, being a parent has enabled me to see the characters who are parents in this book in a different way and empathize with them even more deeply. But when I first started the book, I had a lot of anxieties about being a parent. I had a lot of questions about being a parent. In fact, I mean, without going into too much detail, I didn't know if being a parent was possible for me. And so it was an issue that was on my mind already. And so I think when I was writing the book, I was projecting a lot of my anxieties about being a parent before I was one, or even, you know, even close to being one. I was projecting a lot of that into the parents in this book. In other words, there are a lot of aspects of these characters that are my worries about how I would be as a parent. Like the father, for example, is an academic who is kind of neglectful, at least in the version that is, you know, after the family falls apart. He sort of retreats into his office. And that was always a big concern of mine because I'm a very, I like to have my routines. I like to do the things that are meaningful to me. And so that bred a lot of anxiety in me that I would continue to do those things at a cost to my children and my family. And whether or not that is true is maybe something that you know, other people on this Zoom call can judge. But yeah, so being a parent has definitely changed the way I see the book and the characters, but also like there's a lot of anxiety about that stuff before I was a parent that makes its way into the book, if that makes sense. Thank you for the question, Toby. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting to hear you talk about it, reflect on it. My other question is about the basketball. I was like, how do you know so much about basketball? Like, did you have to watch? Did you already know that stuff from pickup games? It seems like way more than you would know from just playing casually. But maybe I don't know anything about basketball. So like, did you watch games? Did you have to study it? Like, how did you get to that part?
I am in a process of continuous research with basketball that mostly centers on following how the Portland Trailblazers are doing and pinning my emotional status on their wins and losses. For example, right now, I'm wondering how their game is going, and I will continue my research after this Zoom call is over. No, I mean, the real answer is I played high school basketball. I played for a real team. I didn't play a lot. I was kind of a bench warmer like the main character is. But I learned a ton. I mean, it's playing on a basketball team, a high school basketball team is like taking a class in basketball for 4 years. So, I mean, I learned a lot about basketball from the coaching, how to approach it, and, you know, the technical details about how it works and all that stuff. It comes from just experience with it and having a good coach, which is all just like having a good teacher. It's like, you know, how do you know the details about waiting tables? Well, I waited tables. It's same kind of thing. But thank you.
Yeah, I was impressed with the quantity of detail about the basketball, and I also noticed in the section you read today, which I haven't gotten to yet, but the book is just so visceral and physical in a lot of different ways. Like there's the basketball, which is such a specific visceral experience, but then I just feel like it's a very like book that's based in sensation, and that's really cool to read, and it's very like it's very affecting. So I'm enjoying it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Those were great questions. So if we have any more, go ahead and put them in or raise your hand. I do want to remind everyone that we have copies of the book at the store, and JT has mailed us some book plates that are signed. So when you come in and get your copy, you can ask for one of those, and then you have a signed copy. I myself collect signed books. I have a special place on the bookshelf for them. I just think it's so cool. So I can't think of anything else. I feel like we've you've answered some great questions about your book. I feel like I know it better. I do look forward to seeing what you do next, even if it takes a couple of years. We'll keep track of you. And always, if you're in town, please come stop by the bookstore. We'd love to have you in. So yeah, if there are no more questions for tonight, I think we will wrap it up by once again saying thank you so much, JT, for being here on a Thursday night as summer starts. It is very hot in Bend right now. And everyone who joined us tonight, Zoom has become a part of our lives, whether we like it or not. And we're very excited to get back to in-person events when it is safe. So please keep up on our event calendar. We would love to see everyone in the store when we can do that again.
Thank you for having me, Julie. Thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay well. Keep reading.